Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard on PS4. A lot has changed since 1996. Fashions, music styles, political regimes, you name it. Much has also changed as what constitutes horror in video games, especially the concept of survival horror and what that means. So it is not very surprising when one of the grandfathers of the genre would make some major changes as well after a dramatic shift towards action and away from the scares. But just what did we end up with? Well, dear listener, put on your best swamp waders and dust off that shotgun as we dive back into the backwoods nightmare that is 2017's Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. As we know now, the Resident Evil series is the child of many parents. Originally an offshoot remake / homage of Capcom's Sweet Home game from 1989, itself released with a movie of the same name, but soon enough adapting any number of tropes from George A. Romero's Dead trilogy of films, as well as 1980s slasher films, monster, gore, manga, and low-power sci-fi and military action genres. It became the monsters in the big house core of the video game world, with players choosing one of a pair of survivors from a paramilitary outfit, where they gathered clues, solved bizarre puzzles in a hidden mansion seemingly designed to be a death trap, upgraded their arms based on what they could find across the grounds, and eventually discovered that the whole thing was the fault of a multinational pharmaceutical company named Umbrella, who planned to sell the mutagenic virus they created, named the T-virus, to anyone around the world who could pay the price. Over the series' evolution, the games would need to escalate further, next destroying the nearby town of Raccoon City, which caused Umbrella to be brought to task by governments around the world. From there, we took a side trip to rural Spain to rescue the president's daughter from a cult that believed it had found a parasite that could be used to mind control many people. Then a fateful trip to a made-up bullshit, really kind of racist African nation where supposedly the root progenitor virus that inspired the creation of the T-virus was discovered. Yet its effects were shockingly like the totally unrelated thing found in Spain. And finally, a batshit and absolute shit worldwide trip fighting, I don't know, terrorists or something, that required pulling together all the surviving heroes from across the series at this point to have a fucking literal zombie jamboree of gunfights, citywide explosions, and bombastic overacting. Oh, and now we're fighting for Umbrella instead of against it, the company having been reformed under him new management and dedicated to solving the biohazard causes around the globe. And this isn't even counting the side games and spin-offs that were either related to the first three games, attempted to emulate the first three games with the over-the-shoulder style of the fourth game, or just did stupid shit. However, fans were beginning to fatigue hard. There were many other horror franchises in gaming that offered different types of thrills, from ultra-gory splatterfests to real-life horror to psychological mindfuckery, and other types of supernatural evils. But the biggest breakthrough was the popularity of the first-person horror genre, where the vileness is right in your lap, as if it was happening to the player directly. This was a reflection of the changing tastes in horror in cinemas, where franchises like Saw and Hostel featured a type of horror loving called torture porn, in which the thrills is watching some poor sap being slowly mutilated by either the killer or being goaded into mutilating themselves, with the promise of escape by the eventual killer. Not my bag, but people do like this stuff. Yet Capcom did not want to abandon one of their flagship franchises, as Resident Evil has been since its inception, and this comes from a company that is close to a dozen smash hit franchises. So something new had to be done. If nothing else, Capcom is good at observation and studying trends, and has a lot to learn from. When the game we would come to know as Resident Evil 7 was debuted at E3 2016, it was a cinematic trailer showing not zombies or action, but slow decay, disgusting rot of animal bodies, and that fuck-awful trend of pre-TikTok wannabe singers warbling out a popular tune of yesteryear, in this case Go Tell Aunt Rhody, an American folk song originating in the 18th century and talking about a dead goose, but which had been rewritten slightly to be more menacing for Resident Evil 7. In this case stating that instead of the poor goose being dead, instead everybody was dead. I'm still to this day not sure what the fuck this version has to do with the game, but I guess the idea was about some down-home American South horror, y'all. Yeehaw, the South shall rise again with chainsaw in hand and all that shit. I'm only speculating, mind you. Speaking of chainsaw in hand, let's get into the plot. Our new Residents of Evil adventure begins with someone watching a private video clip from their laptop of a woman who looks like she may have had several unfortunate run-ins with a frying pan in her life, waving and smiling to her husband named Ethan, who we soon realize is the name of the character we will be playing. Oh, thank the gods, progress. I'm always happy to see Leon and Claire again. Not as thrilled to see Chris and Jill again. But after 6 games plus another half dozen or more spin-off games, I'd like to see someone new and have a new story to tell. And we got that. But soon the video turns dark. Our skillet victim is back, sweaty and tortured, instead warning Ethan to forget she exists and to stay away. This video has arrived 3 years after the woman in the video, Mia, has been declared missing and legally dead. But Ethan, the ever-doting and dumbass husband, hasn't given up the search for her. So of course he decides to go find out the reason behind this crazy video, instead of contacting the FBI or something first, the sane and correct thing to do. Because what would a cinematic experience be if the hero ignored the inciting incident and refused the call to action more than once? So Ethan drives down to Dulve, Louisiana. I guess the transmission location of the video? You know what, listeners? Maybe you know this and I don't. But as I write this, I still do not know how Ethan made the mental leap to drive to rural Louisiana from some 30-second video clip with no markers or telltale signs of where it could have come from. Ethan certainly doesn't tell us how he came to this conclusion. But here we are driving a car that looks like it was manufactured in 1973, despite the game itself actually supposed to take place in 2017, into the heart of swamp country. He gets out on some dirt country lane, and we are placed in a first-person mode. Not quite a first for the series, but a first for the mainline entries. From here, Ethan wanders around, finds shrines made of animal heads and guts, finds an abandoned van with some sort of ad for a show called Sewer Gators, our reality TV paranormal fake out full of shit analog to popular shows like Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures from around that time, finds weird animal remains, follows some zombie-like dude, and does a little breaking and entering into a dilapidated Victorian-style house tucked away in the rotting heart of the swamp looking for his wife. Again, how he made the mental leap from a video with no clues to it to some abandoned shit shack in the middle of nowhere is still a mystery to me. But here we fucking go. We, as Ethan, begin wandering this house, opening drawers, refrigerators full of rot, pulling switches, and the like in first person while we investigate the house for more clues. Again, all this is very new for Resident Evil as a series, but very much in keeping with the popular horror games of the time. Eventually, Ethan finds a VHS tape, a technology over 3 decades old, and which stopped being used when the DVDs and writable CDs were made public and profitable in the early 2000s, in which we see the last moments of the Sewer Gators before they were killed. Well, 2 of the 3-man team, anyway, but we'll get back to that later. Soon enough, Ethan makes his way to the basement where, oh lordy, he actually finds Mia, locked in a cage. What the hot fuck? He lets her out and has to wake her up, but she recognizes Ethan, whose face we have not and will not see on purpose, and she is babbling incoherently while they try and escape before night falls. Upon getting out, Mia quickly turns into some kind of possessed monster, clearly not under her own control. And it may be that we've gone from zombies to demonic possession as the evil of the game. Certainly a turn, I'll admit. But possessed Mia beats the ever-loving shit out of Ethan, stabbing him multiple times in the left hand, the only part of Ethan we can see and thus get to sympathize with knives and a screwdriver, fulfilling the torture porn Capcom has learned about, and drags up a chainsaw out of literal nowhere to chop Ethan's left hand off before he manages to kill her with a hatchet to the neck. Good thing Ethan is a righty, but the blood loss will kill him soon enough, so this is going swimmingly. It is at this point I was beginning to think I'd been tricked, either that this Ethan would die and not be our protagonist, or that I had been tricked by Capcom into buying one of the most of my hated horror genres of game, the run and hide simulator. Something like an Amnesia or an Outlast, in which the player must run quick and hide and is completely unable to defend themselves. I hate that shit. I find it much more boring and dull than any sort of thrill. But no, Ethan quickly finds a pistol, and now we are in first-person shooter Resident Evil, minus a hand. Ethan must shoot Mia to death again, as goddammit she just won't stay down, and we are then sucker punched by a 50-something man who says, "Welcome to the family, son," before the screen goes black. And that was the title card intro to this game. Ethan wakes up a little while later with some unknown person literally stapling his left hand back on. And he has now some sort of heart rate monitor watch as well, which will be our only HUD for the game. There to check our health, outside of the blood splatter on the screen and the fading of color as Ethan is close to death. Despite the limb having been savagely dismembered, the left hand is now working just fine. A miracle! But Ethan is also strapped to a chair at a cannibal feast, in which we meet the whole family, our enemies for this game. Jack Baker and his wife Marguerite, son Lucas, and Grandma. This scene is intentionally reminiscent of the family dinner scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, with the insanity and rampant mutilation of other family members. When Ethan refused to join the family, Jack beats him more, and the family starts squabbling, leaving Ethan alone with the mute grandmother, and he escapes. This sets off our main premise of the game. Resident Evil 7 is not only an exploration of a spooky mansion game, harkening back to its roots with the first game, but is also a series of running boss fights and Nemesis-style chases. The first section of the game is Ethan running around the house, hiding or staying one step ahead of Jack Baker, as shooting him does no good and only serves to make him mad. Until Ethan has a climactic first battle with Jack in the family garage, where Jack kills a local cop who has come to investigate Ethan's abandoned car, and Jack tries to kill Ethan with an axe and the family Corvette, doing burnouts in the garage and trying to run Ethan down. If you are quick, Ethan can take control of the car, but not before Jack peels it open like a grape with his bare hands, and Jack forces Ethan into a near-fatal crash within the garage, proving to Ethan that whatever Jack is, he can't die. An idea reinforced when a burnt-up Jack rises from the dead to grab Ethan's gun, stuff it in his own mouth, and blow his brains out with Ethan watching. This gives Ethan enough time to explore a bit more of the house and gather up a few new tools before Jack hunts him down again, and the chase continues until Ethan can escape to a part of the house where Jack can't reach him, for now anyway. Jesus, what a wild start. This ain't your daddy's Resident Evil. This is instead a series of spectacle fights in increasing intensity. Ethan then breaks into a new part of the house that both Jack and Lucas have been using to experiment on other victims they have captured over the years. The full 20 missing persons cases in the last 3 that somehow the cops can't solve, and turn the dead into a new type of enemy called the Molded, which are pitch-black amorphous bodies that slap their victims with blob arms and claws and hide in the disgusting growths that run rampant across the estate. Ethan must fight these too, which are surprisingly weak to gunshots and knife strikes to the head, but their bodies are otherwise bullet sponges, until he finds himself in Jack's dungeon, where he and Jack, and I'm not kidding here, have an honest-to-Christ chainsaw duel in a small arena full of hanging bodies Ethan must use to his advantage. Ethan eventually reduces Jack to a pair of legs and bubbling slop, and is able to escape the mansion only to be confronted with worse things. Soon Ethan is outside in a trailer on the property, and getting a phone call from a woman named Zoe, another member of the Baker family, but seemingly the only one not under the spell of whatever the fuck is going on here. Since Ethan survived her dad, maybe he can get himself, Mia, and her out of this place, as long as he plays by Zoe's rules, and he can use the trailer as a safe spot. First, Ethan has to get into the flooded older mansion on the property and deal with her mother Marguerite, who seems to be hunting Mia. Mia has somehow even conveniently left a videotape for Ethan to watch, which we get to play as her in a cat and mouse hunting game with Marguerite, until plot convenience sees Mia captured and dragged off into darkness, like the end of a found footage film. Holy shit, Capcom's dev teams must have spent weeks watching American horror genre movies from the mid 2000s and beyond, because we're hitting every fucking note from the Blair Witch Project through Saw and the Ring and right up through Paranormal Activity. We're getting all the hits. Anyway, Ethan enters that sinking old 1800s mansion, which is now filled with giant wasps' nests, trying to sneak and hide past Marguerite and seek out some kind of literal arm from a mummified fetus, the first half of the thing needed to make the serum that can cure Mia and Zoe. We must rinse and repeat here with the Jack Baker encounters, except the climactic battle takes place in a greenhouse where Marguerite turns into a Spider Woman and births giant wasps from her twisted and crud-covered vagina. Again, completely serious on that. We get to see monster hoo-ha until Ethan kills her and she crumbles into literal dust. We get the thing we need, and now Ethan is being haunted by the ghost of an evil little girl named Evelyn. And somehow Grandma, despite being mute, wheelchair-bound, and only able to turn her eyes to follow Ethan around a room, somehow keeps showing up after these climactic battles to stare at him. We now must move on to the next part of the game, where we must test our wits against the son Lucas, the genius scientist who has no moral character and, as we find, has been killing since childhood. Lucas now has Zoe and Mia, and will only give them up if Ethan can come to his part of the house and beat him at his own games. This is where we get deep into the torture porn section, where we must escape mutilating and lethal traps, fight molded Lucas has set upon us, and eventually recreate the final moments of the last surviving member of the Sewer Gators crew, the cameraman, who filmed the final steps of his own death. In watching that tape, Ethan must learn what not to do to survive. Which, spoiler, he does. Ethan now has both the arm and the head of another mummified fetus, and he has to turn them over to Lucas after he beats his little games to save Zoe and Mia. Now, through a lot of plot convenience, Lucas escapes Ethan's everyman wrath. We free Mia and Zoe turns out to be a brilliant chemist who can turn the body parts into exactly 2 doses of the curing serum. Zoe is also the one who stapled Ethan's hand back on in the moments before Jack dragged him up to family dinner, hours before. But before we can cure them both, Jack returns in the form of a giant mass of eyeballs and sludge and fights Ethan inside a collapsing boathouse, and Ethan has to dose him with one of the cures to get rid of him. Now 1 dose short, for the first time ever in a Resident Evil game, we have to choose to save one of the 2 ladies. I admit this is a shit choice, really. Mia has been a horrific see you next Tuesday the entire game, and Zoe you've only known in person for about 5 fucking minutes, if you don't count the telephone calls. The canon path is that you cure Mia and Zoe gets pissed before sending you away from the house, despite Ethan promising to send help. But if you cure Zoe instead, Mia is heartbroken, and you have to permanently kill her a little later. I mean, look, lady, you're a bitch, and you got declared dead 3 years ago. Ethan should have moved on and left your worthless ass, but let's be honest. He's dumber than a bag of hammers, awkward as fuck, and too much of a shoe-gazing simp to have realized that needed to be done. How he survived this long, I have no idea, besides a fortunate case of main character syndrome. Whoever you decide to save, the pair motorboat off through the swamp only to discover an actual huge fucking oil tanker has somehow run aground in the swamps that somehow no one noticed, no aerial or satellite footage picked up, and no major corporations came to collect, considering how much it costs to build and run and maintain those damn fucking things, when the mold itself attacks them and drags Ethan away, with the mocking laughter of Evelyn following them. If you are still listening to this and you are having trouble putting the plot points together, dear listener, don't worry. It only gets worse. We pick up in Mia's shoes, whether you saved her or not, and you must explore inside the derelict tanker. And we learn more about Mia. Mia, as it turns out, was not on some high-paid rich person babysitting job 3 years ago that went bad. She was, and you won't believe this horse shit, you'll laugh, Mia is in fact an operative in a secret global mercenary organization that specializes in theft and murder, and was contracted by a we promise we're not umbrella, honest, swear to God, military pharmaceutical conglomerate that created Evelyn in a lab based on some kind of sentient hive-like mold organism they found, and contacted Mia and a partner of hers to transport Evelyn to a secure facility in South America from Europe for further testing and containment under the guise that Mia and her buddy Merc are Evelyn's mom and dad. Evelyn, being a twisted lab rat, just wants a family, uses her hallucinogenic powers of her mushroom mold body to control the minds of everyone on the ship into killing each other and themselves while the ship is being buffeted by a hurricane, and begins to puke up the molded on her own as her body destabilizes without its daily stabilizing shots. Yeah, Mia is a trained killer, hacker, mercenary, and thief, and she genuinely chose to marry Ethan, the guy who would serve you coffee at Starbucks or fumble his way through a mid-level IT career. Hell of a cover. I guess she decided she'd rather have James Bland instead of James Bond. Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, Mia gets through the ship only to lose control of herself when Evelyn manifests and she rescues Ethan from a mold blob. If you saved Mia, she shoves you out the ship before she loses control. If you saved Zoe, you must kill Mia here. From there, Ethan stumbles back into the swamps, only to find Lucas's hidden science labs in the remains of an abandoned salt mine, below the water table of the swamp, mind you, that is now full of advanced molded, and where he learns that Lucas was contracted by yet another fucking evil corporation, and that was able to give him mental immunity from Evelyn, as long as he turned her over to them. Holy hell, this is just too much. But anyway, the lab in the mines leads back to the Baker mansion, where Ethan has learned, through open radio contact, that help is on the way. Some force has found the Baker residence, intercepted Lucas's transmissions and emails, and is coming to save whoever is still there. Ethan literally busts his way back into the mansion, hoping to break out the front doors as daylight approaches and get the hell out. Now, there are a whole bunch of swerve endings coming, as befits a horror movie or game. So spoilers from here out if you give a shit. Remember Grandma? Yeah, I'd kind of forgot about her too by this point. Turns out Granny is Evelyn. She was real, not a ghost or hallucination. In the 3 years since the tanker ran aground in the hurricane, she took over the Baker's mines looking for a family, and turned them into what they were when Ethan had to kill them. Lucas was a total shit, but it turns out Jack and Marguerite were actually good people, kind people, God-fearing, and Jack was even a patriot with a Marine's background. Evelyn just ruined them with her powers, but Jack knew this in the recesses of his mind, and somehow his soul asks Ethan to kill Evelyn and put his family's souls to rest, which Ethan agrees to. Evelyn has also destabilized a lot, turning from mean 7-year-old to crippled 80-year-old, but she jumps right out of that chair like this is a tent revival in here, and turns into the prime mold monster, which Ethan has to shoot a lot. The phase 2 begins when Evelyn transforms into a titan of mold, picks Ethan up, and is about to smash him flat when a black helicopter flies in and drops a case of specialized gun in it. And a voice over the megaphone screams at Ethan and us to use it. Another callback to Resident Evil 1. Ethan does, and the dart inside is loaded with the same mold killer that we dosed either Zoe or Mia with, which kills Evelyn for good as she turns into several metric tons of salt. The chopper lands, and who the fuck steps out to greet Ethan after all this? Chris fucking Redfield. Now working for Umbrella. Jesus, hot shit, fucking sucking Christ on a cracker. We can't get away from him in this series. Fuck you, Capcom. Roll goddamn credits. And oh no, wait, it gets worse. I'm not watered down, so I'm dying of thirst. Resident Evil 7 came with a bunch of DLC, too. First was banned footage, where we get to see the last several days of the life of the Sewer Gators cameraman, from Lucas as Lucas tortures him, and other contestants in his twisted little game show he likes to tape and rewatch for fun. which is all just torture footage. Not a Hero is one where we once again take up the role of Chris, eat your mama's asshole Redfield, and must hunt down Lucas Baker in the swamp complex, watching all of your squad mates die until you corner Lucas and he mutates out of control and devolves back into another William Birkin-esque fight in an underground lab. The most interesting of the 3 DLCs I found was called End of Zoe, in which Zoe Baker was recovered by the Umbrella team, but is quickly turning into a crystal. This DLC introduces us to Joe Baker, Zoe's uncle and Jack's older brother, himself a Marine/Special Forces survival-trained and swamp-raised good old boy who lives by himself way out in the swamps, and after 3 years has realized something just ain't right in this here bayou. Yes, the Cajun accent is fucking wild. And decides to pay Jack and his family a social call, only to find the military all over the place and his niece in their clutches, covered with some kind of government shit, and proceeds to beat the fuck out of trained soldiers with his bare hands. It is here that the Swamp Man pursuer boss emerges and kidnaps Zoe. But Joe is not perturbed in the least and chases the thing. This DLC is the wildest shit ever to happen before or since to Resident Evil. Yes, even above the boulder punching ending of RE5, as Joe literally batters every monster and molded he comes across with his meaty, scarred fists until they explode, except for Rambo-style homemade spears and IEDs he uses. He even punches the Swamp Man to death after death, like a first-person Final Fight, which, considering that's another old Capcom property, fuck it at this point, why not, and chases him across the areas covered by Ethan. And if you didn't guess this one final twist ending, Swamp Man is the final evolution of Jack Baker, who supposedly Ethan killed already, and Joe and Jack must have it out one last time. Oh, just so you know, Joe also finds a literal power glove that enhances his punching power. I can't even make that up. This is some video game ass shit going on right now. So the final battle of the game, the canon end to all canons, sees Joe Baker going fist to fist with Jack Baker, and we get a front row seat to see Joe punch, uppercut, suplex, and powerbomb Jack until he bursts like a rotten melon once and for all, and Joe administers the mold cure to Zoe. Roll fucking credits. If anyone needs a cigarette after that, light one up. So, how'd it do? It did pretty good, with critics giving it a lot of 9 out of 10 scores, except for IGN, which gave it a 7 out of 10 for some reason, I guess to be contrarian. The overall sentiment is that the atmosphere was masterful, the gore was welcome and disturbing, but the final battle was disappointing. I mean, shit. With how many left turns this game took, I'd have accepted the final boss battle being a competitive Scrabble tournament against Evelyn, with Chris Redfield in the background doing a naked tap dance routine arm in arm with Ronald McDonald and my own dead grandmother as the canon ending. Fuck off. The game sold a lot too. Over 4 million right away, debuting as the 3rd highest seller behind Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6. Really? Really, Wikipedia? You want to double check that shit? But by 2023, it has sold 12 million units, so I guess they did okay. Especially with everyone of any renown tongue-bathing Capcom's collective shoes, as this was the greatest Resident Evil game to date after it came out. And you know what? I'll let the journalists have that one. I hope you polish those shoes well, boys and girls. Don't forget to floss. This game did its job so well that the collectively scared the piss out of the Japanese market to the point where Capcom had to tone it back down for the follow-up game, Resident Evil Village. Don't worry, I have thoughts on that one too. Holy shit, where do I even begin to add my thoughts on this game? Look, after RE5, I thought Capcom had fucked the series so bad there was no way to recover. I'd resigned myself to seeing a series I'd love backslide into the series fatigue and slush pit of gaming in history, which is every long-running series after a while. It can't be helped. But where Resident Evil 7 debuted, it had me intrigued right away. It was more than a return to form. This is the form it should have been from the beginning. It was tense, dark, and moody. It had taken the best aspects of Mr. X and Nemesis that worked so well for REs 2 and 3 and turned them into the crux of the game so fantastically that you were genuinely scared and helpless, even when well armed. It was good old American-style horror perfected. It even added new systems to deal with first-person combat. The ability to block monster attacks with Ethan's already damaged left arm, or stock of the weapon you were using, and jugs of magical jungle juice that no matter how badly Ethan got hurt or what got chopped off, and a lot would, just pour it on yourself with a dedicated heal button and you were all good. Never mind that Ethan just got his leg ripped off. Pour a little on the stump and glue it limb back on like Gorilla Glue and good as new. Wait, why did we just gloss over that point? Don't ask. You didn't see the man behind the curtain. We'll retcon that shit later. And they did. But we'll get to that another time. We only had to wait 4 years for it. Resident Evil 7 is a fantastic, gory as hell spectacle game full of genuine frights and in the heat of the moment battle choices that has everything going for it and fumbles on the 1 yard line. Like the kind of fumble that breaks the quarterback's leg so bad, we see it repeated on live TV for an entire week afterward as everyone cringes and his career ends. But my God, the lead up to that fumble was just so fucking good that it was worth it. And the DLC does make up for it. Mostly. Redfield Ex Machina aside. Resident Evil 7 is truly a modern classic of survival horror. And if you scare easily, this will be a rough one. And if you are some tough guy macho asshole that doesn't scare easy, or at least claims not to, then go find another hobby. I'm sure there's some village somewhere missing its idiot that you can fill in for, and maybe pick up a few heavy objects along the way to impress the yokels. Resident Evil 7 was a wild ride, and I was here for every glorious, ridiculous, cinematic second of it. Roll credits. Thank you for listening. Deleted Saves would like to thank Brad, Keith Gasper, and Masked Llama for being patrons of the show. If you would like to become a patron of the show, please go to patreon.com and check out Deleted Saves Podcast. All donations go directly towards maintaining the show itself. Thank you.